Relations Committee. Today is Wednesday, September 15th. We will go ahead and take public comment before we start to discuss our agenda today. So, Mr. Clerk, can you go ahead and call the roll?
Certainly, Madam Chair. Councilmember Nuri Martinez.
Present.
Councilmember Joe Buscaino. Councilmember Mark Lee Thomas.
Yep.
You have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Why don't we go ahead, Mr. City Attorney, and explain the speaking rules so we can
Sure.
comment?
So for members of the public calling in, please state which of the agenda items you'd like to speak on. You have 1 minute per item to speak, up to 2 minutes total. And since this is a regular meeting, 1 minute for general public comment if you wish. Speak to the items before beginning general public comment. We'll tell you when your time's up. When speaking on the agenda items, you must be on topic. Our goal is to get through as many speakers as we can. If you're not on topic, or if we can't tell whether you're on topic, you'll get one brief warning from me or the chairman of the committee. If you don't immediately get on topic or again stray off topic, you'll forfeit the rest of your time and we'll move on to the next speaker. For members of the public calling in to speak, when it's your turn to speak, an automated Zoom voice will prompt you to press *6 to unmute yourself. If you don't do so, you'll get another prompt from staff. At that point, if you don't unmute yourself, you'll forfeit your time and we'll move on to the next speaker. Finally, we understand that some of you might be listening to this meeting on more than one device, but if you're calling in on the phone, keep one ear to your phone so that when we identify you, you promptly press *6. And when it's your turn to speak, please turn down the volume on any extra devices you're listening on. Between time delay and feedback, it's going to cause a lot of confusion if you're listening to more than one device. And with that, let's read in the call-in information briefly, and then we'll be ready to start with public comment.
Members of the public who would like to offer public comment on the items listed on the agenda should call 1-669-254-5252. Again, the number is 1-669-254-5252 and use meeting ID number 160-593-4341. Again, the meeting ID number is 160-593-4341, and then press pound. Press pound again when prompted for participant ID. Once admitted into the meeting, press *9 to request to speak.
Okay, let's go ahead and take the first caller.
Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Mr. Idiot, can you hear me?
Which items would you like to speak on?
I want to speak on all items in general public comment because
You have 2 minutes for the items, followed by 1 minute for general. Please begin, speaker.
Sir, let me finish my sentence. Mr. Bloomfield asked me for my name. I told him I was Dick, and he hung up on me
You're not on
earlier.
topic on any agenda items. Please get on topic
First and
now.
final warning, get on topic.
Well, then let me do my general public comment, Mommy.
Then go, we'll give you 1 minute. Please begin your general public comment now.
Okay. That fucking asshole, Bob Bloomfield, cut me off during my public comment time because I referred to myself as Dick, you dick,
So
fobble,
Speaker, I don't see how
sucker.
this has anything to do with this committee. Would you please
Yes,
make
It
sir.
has a lot to...
Thank you very much. Let's move on to the next speaker.
Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Hello, my name is Estella Suarez Hamilton. I'd like to speak on specifically item 5, then after general public comment, please.
Absolutely. So you have a minute for each. Please begin.
Thank you. Before I begin on item 5, thank you very much for doing the right thing just now with that last caller. So item 5, impose penalties for violating rules governing the use of city property and facilities under control and management of city department. You know, I'm not a policymaker. It's kind of hard for me to understand the summary But I just hope that you guys take into consideration that your job is to protect us and not just yourselves. Please don't criminalize our actions, just trying to get your attention, just trying to get your, you to look at the things that we want to address, right? I get that it's getting out of hand with some crazy protesters. I understand, but you guys have private security. Nuri has her own private security. Come on. So item 5 is done. Moving to general public comment. I've said this earlier today. Please let me get through it. It's very important to me. I want to provide some context on the American history of public disease management. A quote from Andrea Patterson's Germs and Jim Crow, The Impact of Microbiology on Public Health Policies in Progressive Era American South. Addressing the poor health of blacks was said to be necessary in order to protect the white women of the South. In Alabama, along with numerous cities, the city of Mobile began to register washerwomen through the Office of City Health and Sanitary Department by issuing health certificates to those who pass a rigorous medical examination. So these medical examinations and health certificates are fossils of how, in the past, public health measures were created to protect the powerful. We, the people, are opposed to the vaccine-proof ordinance, which is a fossil of this time. Please protect us. Please protect our rights. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And members, for the record, I do not have private security, whatever that means. Thank you. Let's move on to the next speaker.
Madam Chair, just for the record, Councilmember Joe Buscaino has joined the meeting.
Very well, thank you. For the record, Mr. Buscaino has joined us. Next speaker.
Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Hi, my name is Sam Burnt, and I would like to speak on item 3.
Please
Go right ahead. You have a minute.
So my name is Sam Burnt. I have my undergraduate degree and master's degree in computer science, and I want to speak in favor of calling on President Biden to cancel student debt. Speaking from my own experience, I went to college in an attempt to get out of poverty. However, my decision to get an education has left me burdened by debt that has only gone up after years of timely repayment. And so what I thought was a pathway to better life has actually left me burdened for life, preventing me from buying a home, preventing me from feeling financially secure enough to start a business, causing me to make sacrifices I shouldn't have to make. And it's not just me. 43 million Americans are now burdened by $1.7 trillion of debt, 2/3 of which are held by women, 40% of which do not even obtain a degree, and 8 million of which are over the age of 50. So how are students, the future innovators of this country, supposed to build a thriving economy and have a fulfilling life if every day we have to make a choice between paying off student debt and putting food on the table? President Biden has the ability.
Speaker.
Next speaker.
Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
You fuck bitches. Fuck you.
So you were already on there, Speaker.
Next
No.
speaker. Next speaker.
Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Yeah, Lynn Spindler, all items and general public comment.
Okay, so you have 2 minutes for the items, followed by 1 minute for general public comment. Please begin, Speaker.
That's good. Number 5, I don't think Joey Bucket should vote yes on this, and any of you should. This was the work product of a convicted federal felon who's rotting in prison right now, Mitchell Englander. The speaker that tried to speak before that you cut off and didn't give him his right to speak, Mr. Englander tried to have him falsely arrested 4 years ago.
So I don't think you're on the.
And then he filed.
I don't think you're on
Will
the
you
items.
just goddamn let somebody speak first? I'm talking about item 5, which involves false arrests, if misused.
Continue.
May I continue, please? Thank God. Because you're going to love my general public comment if you don't like this. Now, this is an overbroad, unconstitutional statute. What is dangerous weapon? What does it mean? So they tried to use a box cutter as a dangerous weapon. So Mr. Englander was being followed by the FBI at the time. So to keep people away from him and other council members, such as Mr. Weezar, he came up with this statute. and Nuri signs it to reactivate it. So now Nuri might be part of Mr. Englander's pay-to-play federal probe now. Did you know that? Did you know that you're putting yourself in the possibility of being indicted if this is a part of that federal scheme on 2 indictments? And you want to pass it? You go right ahead, Nuri. I hope you do, because you belong in a cell next to Mr. Englander, in my opinion. Now I'm going to get to my general comment. Now my 1 minute.
Go ahead, Speaker.
Can I
You've
have
been
my
in
one-
general for a while. Go ahead.
No. I'm in general now. I was defamed and libeled by a member of your council today on something.
Thank you, Speaker.
Next speaker.
Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Hi, Rob Kwan. I'd like to speak on items 5 and general public comment.
Sure. So you have a minute for each. Please begin.
Thank you. Item 5 is something that was introduced at the same time as your protest ordinance. And, Mayor Garcetti today in the Times said that, there are other places where you can be heard in protest. And Nuri Martinez said the same thing the other week, that there's City Hall, there's field offices, other government buildings. But this ordinance actually, the thing you're trying to reactivate would make it a trespass, a misdemeanor for somebody to violate those access rules at those facilities. It also has some really troubling additions requiring people to get searched upon entry into any city facility listed there. It also has a number of banned items, which you might say, oh, that sounds straightforward. But, I just asked Council President Martinez, should a woman taking Metro to the library be unable to bring pepper spray because of the impact of this ban and her unable to go into the library with it? What about an unhoused resident carrying their only belongings? Should they not be able to enter a city facility to get the services they need to find housing? For my general public comment, Nuri Martinez, you might not have private security, but you did have an LAPD security detail until Jamie McBride from the union publicly outed that fact in an attempt at political retaliation for you agreeing to a minor reduction in their proposed budget. And I've never heard you say anything about Jamie McBride doing that. I know why. And I lastly want to talk about redistricting on that whole committee thing that I've brought up before. The undercount analysis that the commission is putting together won't be available till the end of October. So it's not going to be able to inform the maps they give you. You have a limited window for revisions. This is in your interest to beef up the size of the committee that's going to be hearing this item. Alex Padilla, he wasn't even on the redistricting committee when he was council president. Really honorable thing to do, to step aside and have that independence there. I don't expect that from Council President Martinez, but you should know what your model is out in Pacoima. And it does tell us a lot about the current deficiencies in Council President leadership. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Speaker.
Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Hi, my name is Jenny Chang. I'd like to speak on item 3.
Sure, you have a minute. Please begin.
Sure, I'm Communications Director of the California Alliance for Retired Americans, and my comments today are my own. Canceling student debt is not a radical idea. It is supported by Elizabeth Warren and Chuck Schumer. The pandemic has increased inequities and debt crisis. Most of the seniors I work with are retired, but they are helping pay their children's health care bills, insurance premiums. They're helping with rent. People are struggling, and student debt is one of the biggest burdens for people. We have bailed out auto companies and banks. We need to help working people who are the foundation of society. So please support the resolution to call on President Biden to cancel student debt. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes public comment for today's meeting, members. I'd like to take items 1 through 4 on consent unless anyone has any comments or questions.
Move the items.
Item number 3, Madam Chair.
I'm sorry, Mr. Ridley Thomas, say that one more time.
Item number 3, please.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead, 3, so can we go ahead and move, items 1, 2, and 4 on consent without objection? That will be the order. Just going to item number 3, please read that into the record, Mr. City Clerk.
Item number 3 is a Chief Legislative Analyst's report and resolution Bonin Martinez relative to including in the city's 2021-2022 federal legislative program its support for any legislation and/or administrative action which recognizes the Secretary of Education's legal authority through the Higher Education Act of 1965, 20 U.S.C. 1082A, to broadly cancel student debt, and which otherwise would administratively cancel all student debt before payments resume on September 30, 2021.
Mr. Ridley Thomas, item number 3.
At the request of the maker of the motion, a minor technical correction, if you will. Would you strike at the conclusion of the motion on September 30th, 2021? There has been an adjustment in the timeline, therefore making this not applicable. And so the period would be after resume and strike on September 30th, 2021. That would be the request for the maker of the motion, Madam Chair.
Without objection, anyone else have any questions? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and move this item without objection. That will be the order. Let's move on to item number 5. Mr. City Clerk, can you go ahead and read that item into the record, please?
Certainly, Madam President. Item number 5 is a City Attorney reports and ordinances relative to adding Section 63.134 to Article 3, Chapter 7 of the Los Angeles Municipal Code, LAMC, to prohibit weapons and dangerous or hazardous items in city facilities, and an ordinance adding Section 63.133 to Article 3, Chapter 7 of the LAMC to impose penalties for violating rules governing the use of city property and facilities under the control and management of a city department.
Okay, we are joined by Ms. Valerie Flores from the City Attorney's Office. Valerie, can you hear us?
It's going to be David Michelson, who is logging.
I apologize. My notes say Valerie. So, David Michelson, can you hear us?
He's logging on right now. I know he should be on momentarily.
Okay, let's give him a minute because we need him to give us a review of the ordinance and answer any questions anyone might have. Besides, while we give Mr. Michael some time to join us, we're also joined by Captains Warner Castillo, Richard Musquiz, Harry Edo, and Sergeants Antonio Gonzalez and Derek Brown, as well as Detective David Sun from Security Services are also on the call. I'm sorry, on our Zoom meeting, so they can also help answer any questions. Someone let me know when Mr. Michelson has joined us.
He must be having a speck of trouble. I will double check that he is indeed trying to log on. And we've got him.
Mr. Michelson, can you hear us? We cannot hear you, sir.
I apologize, I had some technical issues. Sorry for the delay, I can hear you.
Okay, no problem. Why don't you go ahead and give us an overview of the ordinance and then help answer any questions?
Absolutely, there are two ordinances. Council President, would you like me to go through both?
Yes, yes.
Happy to do so. The first one is an ordinance that would add 63.134, excuse me, which is a new section to the Los Angeles Municipal Code. This new law would provide a list of items that are banned from being brought into a city facility, city-owned facility, such as City Hall East, out in Van Nuys, City Hall in the San Fernando Valley, and other city facilities. So there would be banned items, which are listed in the ordinance, and that's very explicit. It would also allow the security officer on duty in the facility to make a judgment call as to whether an item that's not listed as banned might nonetheless still be considered or used as a weapon or dangerous or hazardous. As we know, there are some materials that are not necessarily a weapon of themselves, but could be used that way. And law enforcement would be allowed to make that discretionary judgment. And finally, this ordinance would also make clear that a person entering the city facility is subject to search, and their items are subject to search, as would be prudent. So that's the first ordinance. So let me pause for a moment and see if any of you have any questions.
Members, are there any questions regarding the first ordinance? Can you talk a little bit about what the penalties would be associated to anyone who brings in any of the items listed as banned from any of our city facilities?
Absolutely. Starting with an item that may not necessarily on first blush appear to be a weapon or hazardous or dangerous, but if an officer decides that no, that item should not come in, because it could be one of those items that could be dangerous or hazardous or possibly used as a weapon, the person is allowed to relinquish the control of the item or dispose of it or store it outside of the city facility before being brought in. So they'll be given an opportunity to still come in as long as they get rid of that item that's presenting a concern or a threat. As to a banned item, they're simply not allowed to be brought in. So similarly, if someone were to try to bring that into a facility, they would be turned around. And if they refused, there would be consequences to that.
Okay, you want to go into the second ordinance, please?
Certainly, thank you. So the second ordinance would add another new section, section 63.133 to the Los Angeles Municipal Code. And this section is designed to provide enforcement when someone is in a city facility violating a rule that's been promulgated in that city facility. So by way of example, the General Services Department is responsible or the steward of many city facilities in terms of maintaining and operating, including City Hall, City Hall East, and GSD under the existing city law has the ability to promulgate rules. And indeed, GSD has some rules. And I'll just mention some. For instance, no one should be sitting in a city municipal building unless they're on chairs or furniture that are provided. No one should be singing or uttering incoherent sounds in a loud and unreasonable voice unless authorized to do so, because there's business going on in our city facilities, and the public's there and city employees are trying to conduct business. There's a host of other rules that are promulgated. And under the city charter, the department head is allowed to promulgate those rules. If it's a city commission, the commission can promulgate the rules. If there is no city commission, the general manager, such as a head of GSD with no commission, can promulgate the rules with the mayor's approval. The problem has been there's really no good means to enforce those rules. So when someone's violating these rules, and this has occurred occasionally in the past, it's very difficult for law enforcement to take effective action. Of course, law enforcement will approach that individual who's violating the rule, and the person will be told, look, you're violating the rule, you're causing a disruption, or you're marking the walls with a pen. You need to stop. And often they will stop, but there are occasions where an individual will not stop, and they will continue to violate the rule, and it puts law enforcement in a difficult predicament because we have no provision in our municipal code that then the officer can turn to and say, you know what, you're not listening. We've given you an opportunity to stop this bad behavior. You continue to violate the rules. We're going to write you up as an A citation, or we're going to issue, actually, no, it's not an A citation. It would be an infraction. And depending on the circumstances, it could be elevated if it's a multiple violation situation all the way to a misdemeanor. So it gives law enforcement an ability to do their job. That's what this ordinance does. It provides that in all city facilities, rules that have been properly promulgated and posted that are violated, there's a consequence when someone disregards the rules and continues to violate. And the sanction is for a first violation, it's a $100 infraction, like a $100 ticket. And for second and subsequent violations, the infraction fine goes up to $250, and ultimately, at the discretion of law enforcement, could be a misdemeanor.
Members, are there any other questions on these two ordinances?
Madam Chair, if I can.
Sure, Mr. Buscaino.
Thank you so much. Mr. Michelson, thank you for the presentation and the report. Look, the item before us, it was adopted by the council on April 5th, 2017. What took so damn long to get this before us?
So no, we actually transmitted it a number of years ago, and it was never scheduled for council. So we've been waiting for it to be scheduled. I personally was the one who signed and transmitted these documents back a number of years ago.
And I understand why we have this item before us. We have experienced in city council, the third graders that come visit us behave better than some of the adults that visit us in committee and during council proceedings. So this year is long overdue. How does this ordinance or these two ordinances, are they similar to other neighboring municipalities?
You know, a number of municipalities have somewhat similar ordinances. I don't know how specifically these two drafts match up, but this, to get to your point, council member, in terms of trying to protect really everyone who's in our city facilities, whether it's a school child or their teacher or someone here to do business or our city employees, this would both with one ordinance focus on what you may not bring in and provides law enforcement more tools. And as to the other ordinance, provides the ability to issue a sanction, a consequence if someone continues to violate rules. And again, we provided these two drafts out of our office a number of years ago, and we're excited that they're before the council today.
I appreciate that. I think we need more consequences around City Hall and our municipal buildings throughout the city. Understanding why this is before us, as we hear when we were meeting in person, the disruptions in the hallways, the nonsense that was happening, the childish behavior from knuckleheads who frequent our buildings. So happy to see this come forward. Would have loved to see this, before us sooner. But so the city attorney's office is willing to prosecute once this ordinance is in effect.
So it's a great question. That's our criminal branch, our prosecutors. Any case referrals made, in this case would be misdemeanors, because infractions obviously do not go to our office. They go straight to court. But if there's a misdemeanor case filing, absolutely our prosecutors will look at it very carefully and working with law enforcement, LAPD typically, to make the right decision to prosecute in the right circumstance, absolutely.
And living in a litigious city, the city attorney's office is confident that we can defend this to the Carol Sobels out in the world, the Stevie Agmans out there who are itching their way towards filing or opposing something like this and trying to sue the city.
Yeah, yes, Councilman. We will vigorously defend this if anyone challenges it. And getting back to your point about prosecutions, of course, they're always case by case, but working with our partners in LAPD, we will absolutely both quickly and seriously review all filings made to the office.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Michelson. Appreciate it.
Mr. Ridley Thomas?
I move the agenda, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I just had one quick question before we do so. So, Mr. City Attorney, Mr. Michelson, I've also tried to look at whether any of this would apply to speakers, public speakers who continue to disrupt our meetings during virtual meetings. Is there any of these two, or I would actually, the second ordinance, apply to those individuals as well?
It's a great question, Madam Chair. So this ordinance specifically does not apply in a location where there's a public Brown Act meeting taking place. So council rules, of course, obviously apply, and you've got council rules that seek to address this. But this particular ordinance applies throughout city facilities with the exception of those rooms where Brown Act public meetings are taking place. Typically, those are council or council committee meetings, and council's own rules will apply. We would be pleased to present yet a third ordinance that could provide consequences for those speakers who've been found and been told, you're off topic, you continue to be off topic, you're not coming back on topic, your time is now up, please stop. And if they do not leave in a timely fashion and just continue to sort of stay at the podium, that's more in person maybe than virtual. there potentially could be consequences with that. But that's a different animal, and that's not before you today.
That's correct, and I think I want to explore that with you even further. I think prior to my presidency, the consequences that I remember, maybe you can refresh my memory, were that if you disrupted the meeting once or twice, then you would be banned from council chambers for X amount of meetings moving forward. Do you remember those days? I almost feel like we're in a daze because we were going on almost our second year of COVID, and there were so many plans on how to move this work forward. But then COVID hit and everything we pumped the brakes because we weren't meeting in person. So I remember those conversations with the prior president. Do you recall those types of consequences? Does that still apply, or are we going to perhaps look at further consequences, stiffer penalties, and in hopes to try to reduce the amount of interruptions that we continue to have during public comment?
Right. So Madam Chair, the consequence, the circumstance when the public was in chambers where the problem would arise, one of a number of problems, admittedly, but the one I think we're focusing in on, if there's a public speaker up at the podium, they've got their minute or they have their 2 minutes, and they won't leave the podium when they're done, or they're being disruptive, or they're off topic, they're not coming back on a topic, they've been told, they've been warned, get back on topic, they don't come on topic, and their time is extinguished, but they won't leave timely. They just stay there and keep on talking, even after the mic is cut. LAPD does a very good job of coming up to this individual, trying to coax them out of the council chambers. Sometimes they won't leave timely, sometimes they make a huge racket the whole time, minutes go by. While it does not happen frequently, when it does happen, it's yet again another example of a challenge for law enforcement what to do in this circumstance. There's no particular, readily available law that's easily applied. There could be an ordinance that amends the municipal code that very narrowly addresses the issue. So when someone's time has been terminated because they remain off topic, they won't get on topic, or their time is ended anyway, and they just won't leave timely, and they're creating a fuss, a disruption, and they still won't leave timely, there could be a muni code provision to make that an A citation or possibly an infraction, so there's some teeth, and it would give law enforcement the ability to sort of motivate folks, no, I'm sorry, your time is done, you've been disruptive, you continue to be disruptive, you need to leave right now. And if you don't leave right now, there will be a consequence. So that is an ordinance, if your council would like, we could draft, but that's not before you today.
It's not. So I will talk afterwards about how to proceed with that, but it is an area of concern for me. And I know that meeting virtually, I don't know when, we're not going to stop meeting virtually. So I think we need to put those parameters in place. So I appreciate you being here. Thank you. Members, are there any other questions or comments?
Madam Chair, as you know, this has been a concern that has been raised repeatedly. And I appreciate the fact that it's being raised here, but the content as it relates to not simply being disruptive, that which contributes to a hostile work environment. Those terms that are racist, xenophobic, homophobic, sexist nature are those that really militate against the polity and the civility of the meetings that we wish to hold forth. I know that there are some concerns that have been raised along these lines, but I think, Mr. City Attorney, there ought to be a readiness to adopt such a motion, and should it come forward, I must say to you, I think the time for it to come forward is well past, Madam President, in the appropriate context and time frame. I fully intend to move that forward and cause members of the council to instruct the city attorney to do so if deemed appropriate. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So without objection, this item is approved. Mr. Clerk, what is before us now?
The desk is clear, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much for joining us, and our meeting is adjourned. Goodbye.